Hello and welcome to Steam to Live the Dream. This is your host, Taj McCameron. Still trying to figure out what's going on with the balance of this camera, but doing a little bit better than we were the last time, so this is good. I'm just gonna run with it for right now. At least you can see me. See if I can use the light to make it a little clearer. All right. I don't know why it's so gray or black and white, but kind of throw me off with the beginning of this stream because of I've been trying to get this thing to set up for the whole time. But what are we doing with the channel now? This is just like a updated video of what we're doing with the channel now. As we have been in the progression of me really just trying to find out where and how and in what way I wanted to develop the visual process for this channel and, find the right balance of what I wanted to do with it. I've just been processing through a lot of information and trying to find out the best way to put my expertise into one thing. Now, a lot of gurus will tell you, oh, as a YouTuber, as a social media person, as a person that is trying to build a brand, that you don't do this, don't put too much, don't put this niche down to this one thing, and this one thing will be like your thing. And then later on you can grow. But usually when you niche down to one thing, you usually end up becoming known for that one thing. And if you're a multi-talented or topic, some people like to call it multi-hyphenate, you have a lot of things within you that you desire to talk about. And that's the type of person I am. I kind of have a lot of things that I'm interested in and a lot of things that I desire to talk about all at the same time. And for me, it was finding the right balance in order to be able to talk about these things in a cohesive way. How do I make all of these things work cohesively so that I'm operating in the best version of who I'm trying to portray? And that is always dependent on me personally finding my identity personally and then being able to create what's the word I'm looking for? Formula for what it is that I was trying to do. Because you have to know who you are and what your desires are. Find order in that. Find your zone of genius, that point in which all the things that you enjoy intersect. And that is really who you are portraying yourself as, because that is your true target. That intersection between all the things that you're interested in and them coming together in the point of the center. And that central point is your target. And for me, for years, I had interest in talking about faith, talking about kingdom relationships, talking about finance, fashion, food, business, all these things. And I couldn't quite figure out what it was that I was centered around. I loved music. I loved listening to music. I loved writing music. I loved all of these things. I love reading and writing, and I've written books and all of these types of things. But what draws all these elements and characteristics of who I am back together so that I can best be able to share my expertise in the multiple areas that I'm most familiar with you. And my zone of genius has come to the development of realizing that I always, from the jump, wanted to talk about what goes on internally reflects outward on your external environment. But I didn't know how that fit until I was reminded when watching something recently of the fact that everything I'm doing, from Kingdom Creative, Collective Connective, from my financial stuff, from all of it, all of these things, central point is finances. From clothing is a financial thing. Business is a financial thing. Relationship is a financial thing. Faith, believe it or not, is a financial thing. Music, financial thing. All of these things are centered around finance, but nobody really talks about that. And it's the understanding the relationship with your finances, which helps you understand the mindsets that were developed as a child that grow you into the adult and how you manage your money, whether you're a person that is operating in poverty or a person that has a lot of money that is in a career that just doesn't know how to manage it. Because the one thing that I hear most often is a whole lot of creatives go into industries after all they've been through and end up in poverty because of their mindsets. And the industry feeds off of the fact that a lot of these creatives know nothing about finance. They just don't have any financial understanding, and they get them to sign these bloat contracts with, over time, either one of two things. The contract is a bloat contract, which means that they made them sign this contract that looked like it had all of these bells and whistles on it, but it was literally going to shelf their album and they were never going to see it hit light of day. But they already signed the contract, and they can't get out of it for the way it was formatted. This is what you see when you see, for instance, music artists like JoJo and other artists that we've seen get trapped in contractual agreements where they might get one album out or two albums out, but their contract was like 5 albums or for a series of years that they were to be with that company. And because of the fact that maybe the company folded or what have you, that they literally, because of the intricacy of the way that the contract was written, ended up having to wait years before they were able to legally use their name. And this is where you see artists like Prince changing his name to the artist formerly known as Prince. And you see artists shifting their brand ever so slightly to make an adjustment for the shift, because if they don't, their fans are going to be wondering where'd you go, because they legally cannot use their name anymore. And for JoJo, for instance, she was a teenager when her contract was destroyed. The company that, in fact, was owned by Aaliyah's uncle, that company folded. When the company folded, it was a loophole in her contract that situated her in such a way that all the music and everything that she created during the time that she was under that label, she couldn't use any of it. And because the contract was for a lengthy period of time, I can't remember whether it was a 10-year contract or whatever it was, but she was only just able to get rights to use her name, her music, her songs, and all that, her masters and everything back. Was it 2 years ago? And she just turned 30, 32, I don't know. So for a good 14 or so years, she couldn't use her name. She couldn't use her name, likeness, or voice. So the only reason that she was able to do anything was she had to reposition herself, that she was able to do concerts and she was able to do other things, but with that fact, she wasn't able to publicly be a part of a label in a massive way. So these are the things that a lot of people don't even know about, and they ain't even looking at their contract to make sure that this is the case, because they just too busy like, ooh, record label offered me money, I can get started with what it was that I was interested in doing. In today's record labels, they trying to get as much as they can out of the artists, especially the ones that aren't operating in the authenticity of ethics. They would rather sign you and leave you than to sign you and actually work with you in such a way that's going to be able to be a blessing to you and walk with you. Only companies with integrity will really walk with you and keep you under their wing so that you will be able to balance out what it is that you're trying to create in the long run of what you're trying to develop. Yes, it can become difficult, and we see it becomes difficult for a lot of artists because they don't really understand the things that they're signing. And if they don't have the right people looking out for them with the right contractual agreements, they will get run over very fast. And this doesn't just happen in the music industry. It happens in acting. It happens in a lot of creative positions because the person isn't aware of what it is that they're signing when they're signing most of their contracts. So because of that, they truly end up in scenarios that are least lucrative for them. Because I literally watched a documentary that talked about the way that labels operate with artists. They put the artists in a situation that they at one point were putting out a bunch of money to these artists, and they weren't telling them that the money was on a loan. So the artist was acting foolish with it, running it out. And the funny thing was, and sad thing was, that it was the actual company that was pushing them to do that, because every time they had a business meeting, they were taking money out of that. Every time that they had to record, they were taking money out of that. Every time they had to take a car somewhere, they were taking money out of that. Every time they were going to the club, and they weren't telling them that every time you go to the club, yeah, we taking money out of that. And they sitting up there spending up all their money on their friends, all that type of stuff. And they looking at it like, I got a $20 million contract. The next thing they know, after everybody got paid, after the album was made and the executives were paid and the pennies on the dollar for every album recouped back, and then having to do the touring and all of that kind of stuff and performance elements, a lot of these artists were in so much debt that the record label pretty much owned them through their next several albums. So even if they had a 5-6 album contract, because they owed them so much money, it was expected that the artist was going to make that money back. And if their album didn't do well enough to make all the money back that they invested in them, then they could do a 5-album contract and end up with nothing at the end of that contract that came out of it for them, because each album was pennies on the dollar that were coming out for them per sale. So after they got the house card, all that kind of stuff, they usually ended up in hock after all of that. And it's like, people wonder how these artists end up with no money. Because they weren't spending smartly during the time in which they were operating, which left them at a deficit financially. And that financial deficit put them in a bad place. They were unable to pick up after that. So they were trying, you ended up with a lot of your artists trying to pick up the pieces afterwards and trying to salvage their careers, because now people knew them. So they really figured that, well, at least people know me now. I can get my fan base to help me regrow myself, but they were never able to get back to the level that the label made them, because the label had the access to the promotion and advertisement and access to your magazines and your promotional locations and your access and connections with these award shows and all of this types of stuff. And when you're trying to do it independently, you got to find the independent locations, and people can't really find you because you're not, it's the equivalent of today's social media. If you're not paying per play or paying ads to get in front of your audience, it's the same way in the industry. If you're not with the big boys in the labels that have in their back pocket your Grammy shows, your music shows, your morning entertainment shows, all of these types of things, they will line you up and set you up sweetly. They will tour you and all of this types of stuff. But then turn around, and if you owe the company, you'll come off of a 5-album thing, and most people looking at you like, oh, you must be set. And the person's like, no, I'm not. I borrowed those clothes. Everything I was spending was on loan. I owed the company this much money, and look at what happened to TLC. And they had the audacity to get paid in Range Rovers. People have to live, you know. So it's all about the way that they go through the process and the operation of preparing themselves, whether you're a struggling, starving actress, what have you. What are you doing ahead of time to financially structure yourself? It's the same thing with the creatives that we see on these YouTube channels, that they got influencer fame and sat up there and hit rankings and got monetized channels and were making millions of dollars off of their channels through sponsorships and all of these things. And then all of a sudden, they disappeared. And people are like, what happened to you? And I was looking at a video documentary on the influencers, and the same thing happened. They didn't have, these people were regular people, and they didn't think to sign up to get a CPA and this person when they had multiple millions of dollars so that they could reinvest that money into investment stocks, bonds, CDs, capital, home investments, insurance, trust funds, all these types of things in order to secure and keep a back end log of their money so that they would then be able to reinvest whatever money that they got or had long-term stretch plans in the case the algorithm changed and none of their videos were being seen. And they weren't smartly planning for anything like that, or much like it's a YouTuber, her entire channel got hacked. She woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning to her assistant calling her and telling her, "Oh, that million followers that you had," she like, "Had? What you mean had? They gone. Your channel's gone." She opened up. It's an influencer's nightmare. Opened up the channel. Everything was gone. She was down to zero. Her videos had disappeared. Everything was gone because somebody had hacked her channel and destroyed everything. And it took her months upon months to get everything back in order. And if you literally watch her video, it will scare you straight into financially securing yourself under any circumstances as a creative. So what did I say all that to say for? I said all that to say that we have to have a better relationship with our finances as creatives. And we have to set ourselves up with the right financial foundations when starting as creatives, because if we are not doing these things, we will end up financially strapped. And being creatives, and majority of business owners will tell you, but they don't say this in the midst of a lot of situations because they don't never want to say this. They'd love to just sell you the pipe dream of, oh, start a business, invest the time, invest the energy, and you'll get the million subscribers, the million follower account, the $1 million, and you can sell your hot ticket offers, do events, fly all over the world, and do all this beautiful stuff. And it's like, what they don't tell you is you have up and down seasons. And if you don't set yourself up right financially, that during your down seasons, you could literally destroy your company. But if you set yourself up right in your up season and create your content, develop the systems, develop everything, that when you have a down season and you need to regroup, instead of you having a grid that goes like this and dips sharply, you going like this and you may have a mild dip as it goes back to where it's going. Why is it mild? Because it's going to dip ever so slightly, because you no longer are operating at the same pace that you were, but because of the fact that you had the content, you had the systems in place, you had all of that in place. During the fact that you are not in the midst of this part of the season because things are going on, it's still fluctuating or operating at the same level, and you can go through whatever turbulence you're going through in your life, but nobody has to see all that. Yeah. You think that doesn't happen to celebrities and famous people and highly financially what so people? It does. They have, life happens to them too. Because for some reason, people believe that celebrities and people that got money, life don't happen to them. Life happens to them actually seemingly more than it happens to us. But the thing that they have is they got a publicist that can spin their life situations and or sweep their life situations up under the rug until a later date. But the way that the industry is set up is somebody knows, and they usually wait until good and ready time to destroy the person. Then all the stuff that they were going through behind closed doors comes out. That's what happens. And when that happens, then yeah, you end up with a lot of, that's when it dwindles down. There's some things happening in the public eye right now with some celebrities. And if I wanted to go there, I could make this whole segment about that. But you know what? I'm choosing not to because it's been talked about so heavily. I don't want to talk about it. It's not really all that relevant to the conversation. So, but the point to be made is if you go through a season, you're not going to be destroyed in the midst of that happening. You know what I'm saying? And you have to have the right financial viewpoint, positioning, all of these types of things as a creative to be able to do that. So what am I talking about now? I'm talking about a series of areas in which I'll walk you through that you can find yourself in. And I explain through understanding, knowledge, and experiential knowledge, even telling parts of my own testimony as it relates to me, how you either get in those situations, get out of those situations, and depending on where you are, meaning if you're all the way at the bottom and you can't even find your way to get up, I help you understand, make these small tweaks and changes, make these identifications, make these tweaks, and you'll start to see something change. The biggest issue that we have in society is most people are one, lukewarm, and two, we live in a microwave generation of millennials that if it doesn't happen yesterday, it took too long. This is why get rich quick schemes, those people actually get rich on selling you get rich quick schemes, because most people would rather have the opportunity to get rich quickly than to slowly have a short-term loss for a long-term gain. A lot of musicians that go into the industry, a lot of actors and creatives that go into these industries and wouldn't have become one album, one shot, one movie. You only saw them in 2 films. You only saw them here. They acted very